This is what driving with an out-of-tune engine feels like. Keep your engine running smooth. Stop by AutoZone and get all the parts you need for a tune-up. Maximize summer miles per gallon with 2 10-ounce bottles of Gum Out Expert Series Fuel System Treatment for just $8. Restrictions and details in store.
AutoZone. A Memorial Day doubleheader. First in Yankee Stadium, the Royals face the Yankees. Then in Oakland, it's the Tigers and A's. The Yankees and Royals at 12:30 Eastern, followed by the Tigers and A's. Monday on ESPN and on ESPN Radio. This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast on ESPNRadio.com. The Best of Mike and Mike.
Hey, it's Greeny. Thank you for checking out the Best of Mike and Mike podcast. Here's what we have for you from Friday. Warriors win. Don't blame the Rockets coach. We'll get into that and much more with Brian Windhorst. Tony Kornheiser all around the world of sports, on basketball, being a member of the media, and a whole lot more. Plus Buster Olney with farm stories and using an illegal substance while pitching.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
So glad you've chosen to start your Friday with us. And what a sight this is for sore eyes on 2 different levels. One of them is I can actually see my staff, which I usually cannot, because Golick is usually blocking out the sun, as well as Patriot Ray and Cerruti sitting over there. But today we have 4 hours of fun with our long-lost friend, Robert Stanberry Olney III. We all know him as Buster. What a delight to see you, Buster.
It's great to see you, but I must say it's really kind of awkward.
Which is why? Why is
because
that?
I listen to you all the time, and you're always complaining about any sort of a handshake, any sort of physical contact, right? So I haven't seen you probably in more than a year, in person, right? So I walk
I don't know about that. That might be a stretch.
No,
I feel like I've seen you more recently than that.
In person, no. I think it's
perhaps
probably
not.
about that. Okay.
I guess perhaps the details of the restraining order have come through finally. Yes, go ahead.
So you're in the makeup room, right? And I walk in there. Oh, there's Greeny. What? A person in my position, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to shake your hand? Am I supposed to do the fist bump? Am I supposed to hug you? Wrap my arms around? What am I supposed to do with it right there?
I'm trying to institute the bow. You know that.
I know that.
I'm trying to do that. And every now and again, people hear me say this on the air. When they see me somewhere, they'll walk a greeting, and they'll bow. I think it's a good greeting. I really do. Let's work on that.
Well, I made the mistake of extending my hand, and then halfway as my hand was going out, I was oh, that's right. He doesn't do handshakes. And then I tried to make the fist bump, and then I was saying, no, he doesn't like physical contact. And then what was your response?
I said, you seem like a clean person
to
me.
Thank
so
you.
I was
appreciate that.
happier with that than normal.
It was good to see you.
We wound up sort of in a strange, you went to the fist bump and I went to the open hand. Next thing you know, it was like paper over rock.
Right.
We're playing rock, paper, scissors.
It was very awkward. It was all your fault.
It was. I completely agree. But we got Buster here. We're going to take your Twitter questions from him all morning long. We'll sprinkle them in. Baseball season is we're about a quarter of the way in, and we really haven't gotten deeply into it yet here between the NBA playoffs, the craziness with Tom Brady, and everything else. So we will definitely make sure we set aside time all morning long for your questions. Again, on Twitter, use the hashtag AskBuster, and we'll take them all morning long. But we start with this. What a finish.
Curry backs off surveys. He's got 5 to shoot. He throws cross-court to Iguodala. His pass deflected. It's grabbed by Barnes into the lane. A little roundhouse scoop. Won't go. Harden the rebound. 7 seconds. Harden clears midcourt with 4. Harden steps back with 3. Gives to Howard. Back to Harden with 1. He will not get off the shot. Thompson deflects the ball away. Golden State gets possession. The game is over. 99-98. Warriors win it. Oh, they had the play they wanted. Unfortunately for him, all the second guesses will say, well, he shouldn't have passed the ball away in the first time. That's the second guess. But he did the right thing because he was out of control. But then, unfortunately, what happens when he gets the ball back, give Golden State credit, they trapped him, and he could not dribble. Give Golden State a lot of credit. The 2 defenders saved the game.
That's a terrific call by Kevin Calabro and Hubie Brown right here on ESPN Radio. There's a lot there. So let's go through it, because it's a terrific game. A terrific game last night, much as was the case in Game 1, where Houston jumps out to the huge lead, and then by halftime it's all gone. The reverse happens last night. Golden State, the huge lead. By halftime it's all gone. Then the second half is a magnificent duel between the top 2 vote-getters for MVP this year, Steph Curry on one side, and Harden, who is going to, on some level, wear the goat's horns last night. And what a shame, because he was terrific last night. 38 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists, only 2 turnovers, but unfortunately on that last play is the second one. And if you did not get a chance to see it, and if you're not with us on ESPN2 where the crew will show it to you over and over again, the way it basically breaks down is this. The Warriors with a 1-point lead. Harrison Barnes takes the ball to the basket, puts up sort of a reverse, very tough reverse layup that does not go. Now, on the ensuing rebound, Barnes goes to the ground. Draymond Green, in going for a rebound, is sort of thrown out of the play. He's out of bounds.
Beyond the baseline.
Beyond the he's under the stanchion. So there are two Warriors that are completely out of the play as Harden is racing up the floor the other way with about 8 seconds left. And you'll hear Kevin McHale in a second say that's why he chose not to call a timeout, because he thinks, A, he's got numbers, which they sort of do, sort of don't.
Oh, they had numbers.
They had. You think they did? I mean, the other three guys got back quickly, and the Rockets, it wasn't like they had 4 red shirts in the play. Either way, yes, I agree with you.
It's a broken play.
The broken play. That's correct. And you've got the ball in the hands of your best player who's red hot, who's tremendous in the open floor. Let him go up there and try and win the game. And as you'll hear P.J. Carlesimo say as well, and, you know, Buster, this is sort of the way it works in sports. If you've got a few seconds left, obviously baseball's a different situation, but let's just say if you were to tell a baseball manager, you know, I can have the season on the line and I can have Miguel Cabrera standing in the batter's box.
Right.
I'll take my chances in that circumstance, and that's what it was. McHale had the ball in the hands of James Harden running up the floor on a broken play, down 1. He'll take that 10 out of 10 times. I do not fault him at all for not calling the timeout.
No, and I think in this Twitter world, we're so accustomed to every play being second-guessed. In fact, I've had Major League managers who participate in the postseason say that part of it's gotten ridiculous, that no matter what they do, they're a complete idiot, right?
Right.
If it doesn't work out, they're a complete idiot. If it does work out, they're a total genius. And that's the thing about this play. You can watch this play out, and there are going to be a lot of people say, why didn't McHale call a timeout? Could have given the ball, set up a play, been in a better position. But when you hear his explanation and you watch it play out, he did the exact right thing.
I agree. To be clear, they did have a timeout remaining. Now, why do I keep telling you what he's going to say? Let's hear him say it. Here's Kevin McHale afterwards again on the final play of what was a terrific Game 2 in the Western Conference Finals.
When we got the rebound, someone fell down for them. I'm not sure who, and someone was out of bounds for them. So I could drop a lot of plays, and it wasn't going to be one guy laying on his back and one guy out of bounds, so I just let him go. Hey, look, we'll take our best player coming downhill. He's a great downhill player. And that thing, they kind of pinched him, had a little bit of a bobble. I was trying to then the ball got loose, and I was trying to get timeout late at that time. We should have, if we had timeout, could have probably called it with about 2.5. But when I glanced up and I saw 2 guys behind the play, there's just no way I was going to call a timeout at that point. And I don't know who fell down, but one of the guys had fallen down on the right side of the court, and I think Barnes missed the reverse, and he was out of bounds. So I figured if nothing else, we had a 4-on-3.
So to be clear, he had that backwards. Barnes is the one who fell down.
Right.
Barnes, who misses the reverse, is the one who then, in the continuation of his play, slid onto his butt. Now, he got up and was running pretty quickly, but he was the one on the ground. Draymond Green was the one who got knocked under the stanchion going up for a rebound. But the premise of what McHale is saying is correct, that there were 2 Warriors who were basically out of the play. They weren't going to get back in time to stop Harden. Let's put it that way.
Right.
They had no chance of getting back in time to stop Harden. So if Harden had gotten all the way to the basket or gotten into a position where he had a shot that he liked, those 2 guys weren't going to have a chance. What winds up happening, and you heard Hubie Brown say it, and how good is Hubie? I mean, in that instant, he's calling exactly
Hubie
what
Brown
happened.
is like my hero when it comes to basketball. I learned basketball from Hubie Brown.
Absolutely. And as he points out, Harden, you say to yourself, why is Harden giving the ball to Dwight Howard at the top of the key? Because Harden is kind of a little bit out of control. Now, that's the one instant where maybe you could have called the timeout when you see, wait a minute, this isn't going the way we wanted to. There's 2 defenders there. It's Thompson and Curry. They're both on Harden. At that point, he has to give the ball up to Howard. Maybe that's not better, so they could call a timeout. That said, in that instant, to call a timeout, who knows if the ref's going to see you? They're all watching the floor. I mean, they didn't even get a David Blatt timeout when he was,
right.
in basically a stoppage. So I don't have any criticism of last night. Sometimes great finishes happen, moments happen, and there was an expectation, as you were just saying, someone has to be the GOAT. Someone has to have just screwed this up beyond belief. And you can blame McHale if you want to. You can blame Harden if you want to. Give credit to the Warriors. They played a really good play defensively. They got the ball out of the hands hands of James Harden, which is what you want to do, and in the end they hold on for a 1-point win.
And think about that. As we were talking about on the offensive end, they didn't take the time to draw up a play. Well, the defense didn't draw up a play either, and yet the reaction of Klay Thompson and Steph Curry to that moment to immediately lock in on Harden to try to prevent him from getting a shot. What a tremendous reaction. And on the other hand, after watching what Harden was doing the whole night, what else could you be thinking? Because no one else was going to try to take that shot for the Rockets last night.
I thought that was great. I thought that was, you're 100% right. The numbers coming out of last night were incredibly similar. If you look at what the superstars did, James Harden had 38 points and Steph Curry had 33. And just look at the similarities of the numbers on the stat sheet. The Rockets had 39 field goals, the Warriors 41. The Rockets made 7 threes, the Warriors 8. The Rockets had 13 free throws made, and the Warriors had 9. Both teams had 39 rebounds. The Rockets 18 personal fouls, the Warriors 17 fouls. So my point is that the stat sheet incredibly similar, incredibly even last night, and that's how this game was. It was this whole second half was back and forth. Now the stat that Hembo just sent me, the Rockets are done. Teams that go up 2-0 in best-of-7 series in NBA playoff history win 94% of the time. They're 252-16. Do I think the Rockets are going to come back and win this series? No. But do I think they can? Yes, because I think the first 2 games are both right there to be won on the road. Howard's not himself. Give him credit. Howard takes a lot of criticism, a lot of places, including here. Last night plays 40 minutes, 19 points, 17 rebounds. So give him a lot of credit.
I've got a little bit different take on that one. I think we could put Dwight Howard. We can nominate him for the Paul Pierce Wheelchair Award, okay? Because I was watching, of course, it was the 2 days where it was the conversation, is Dwight Howard going to play, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm watching him warm up, and I'm like, he looks pretty good. This is not Willis Reed getting work on the training table and limping out, and he's doing the work, and then with a half hour to go, I saw the first tweet, hey, he's going to play.
Yeah.
And it was announced, it was breaking news, and then you see him run him down the floor. He doesn't look limited at all. He went to playing 40 minutes. So I don't know if I want to give him the Red Cross, okay?
All right. One where, listen, you're what you are. You're a cynical man, Buster. You are a cynical man. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. They'll compare rates for you so you get the best deal, even if it's not with Progressive, saving you time and money. Now that's Progressive. Call or click today. Here's James Harden on that last play.
Got the ball off the glass, and I'm thinking just to try to get an easy one, and they did a good job of having 2 guys, on me, and so I couldn't attack, and when I looked up, I saw a red jersey, and it was Dwight, so I tried to throw it back to him. I mean, at that time, I'm thinking it's 5 seconds on the clock, so I tried to get the ball back, and it was still 2 guys right there. I watched the film. It's just a tough play.
It's tough to watch Harden lying on the ground after he misses it. Again, if you didn't stay up late and watch the game last night, maybe you're just seeing it on our replays here. But after he loses the ball, he just sort of puts his head down on the court, and he's just crushed. And, it's a tough moment because he really did play so well, and I think he has so much riding on this. If you look at the stars that are out there now, Cerruti brought this question up the other day, Buster, and I'll ask it to you as an astute observer of, again, baseball is your sport, but for those who don't know Buster follows all this stuff closely, and I think sometimes brings a nice perspective because it's not what you live in and day out. If you look at the 4 superstars, there really isn't a superstar on Atlanta, so they don't really have someone in this area. You want to, say Jeff Teague or Al Horford, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But if you look at the stars, James Harden has everything in the world to gain in all of this, and a little bit to lose. Steph Curry has everything in the world to gain in this and a little bit to lose. LeBron James has everything in the world to gain in this, and I think nothing to lose. Because
you think so?
Yes, if they fall short here.
Yeah, with all the injuries.
With all the injuries they've
right.
had. And he put this thing together. He came back as the conquering hero. This is the worst team they're going to have in the foreseeable future, and everybody kind of knows it. I don't think I think you would have to be crazy if they wind up falling short in the finals, if they lose to a stacked Golden State team. I don't think anyone will criticize that. My point is, there's James Harden lying on the ground knowing in that moment he's got a chance to be the hero of all heroes, steal game 1, go back home, we got it, and then to not even get a shot off, that's a very tough way for that game to finish.
And Chris Broussard was in the locker room afterward, and he talked on SportsCenter about how he was hearing stories about how Harden was really upset and he was kicking chairs.
I've got it.
Okay.
Let's play it. Here's Chris Broussard.
By the time we got in there, they were calm, but before we got in there was the storm, and James Harden was very frustrated with himself. He admitted he was kicking chairs. He was saying stuff. His teammates calmed him down. They told him, look, we trust you in that situation. We want the ball in your hands in that situation. And after that, things kind of calmed down.
That was Broussard on SportsCenter.
But the one, so he was clearly upset. But here's, again, I'm not a basketball guy, but I'm watching these teams play. I mean, the Warriors, are they not easily the best team left? I mean, it's not even close. They're prohibitive favorites to win this thing at this point. And if they happen to pull out a game or two, or let's just, for argument's sake, say they were to win this series, that would be amazing. Can't imagine people that are expecting the Rockets to win. Everything is on his back. So I don't know if he has a lot to lose if, in this case, because I think the Warriors are that good.
Yeah, I agree. I would say a fully manned Cleveland team, which means a healthy Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love. I don't think that Golden State would be a prohibitive favorite to beat them. I think that, to me, is a dead-even series. I think I would actually favor Cleveland. I think they would be rolling even more than they are rolling if they had Kevin Love healthy through this run through Chicago, and I think they're going to get through Atlanta, even with Kyrie Irving a shell of himself. With them in that condition, I can't see them beating Golden State, and I do not see Houston beating Golden State. Now, having said that, I didn't see Houston beating the Clippers. I thought to be honest with you, a week ago, you got to be honest, a week and a half ago, I thought the Clippers were the favorite to win the championship. I really did.
Okay.
I thought the way they were playing up 3-1 against Houston, and at that basic moment in time, Golden State was down in their series against Memphis, down 2-1, or I just pulled back to 2-2. They looked a tiny bit vulnerable. They faced that one moment of adversity they've had so far. I have to be honest with you. At that moment, I thought that if you had told me right then, bet on a team to win the championship, I would have taken the Clippers. So these things do change. But, yes, to your point, I think most people would say the Warriors are a significant favorite.
Doesn't it feel like at times like the Warriors are just running a layup drill?
Yeah.
I mean, it just last night, the early part of that game, they're running them down the floor. They're dunking all over the place. They're going crazy. By the way, have you ever seen a head coach have more fun than Steve Kerr? I got a problem with that, too.
Why?
He doesn't look like he's full of the angst. You know, you look at a Belichick in the sidelines. He's always, he's got the hoodie on. He looks like he's thinking. Steve Kerr just looks like he's enjoying himself.
Yeah, because he has such a good team, and he's got a little bit of that demeanor about him. The one thing, we had Brad Stevens in here for the final 2 hours yesterday. For those of you who didn't get a chance to hear it, some of you listening now maybe are with us real early in the morning and you're not with us later. Get yesterday's Best of Mike and Mike podcast. It's on ESPNradio.com every day. Because we have Brad Stevens in studio 2 hours, and he is so smart and so good from an X's and O's standpoint. And we got through that. Here's why the Warriors look like they're running a layup drill. Because Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. Now, Thompson 1 for 7 from 3 last night after 1 for 7 from 3 in Game 1. So even I, with my limited math skills, know that he's 2 for 14 from 3. So he's not hitting shots, but you still have to honor him taking that 3. But particularly Curry, he stretches your defense like a rubber band. You stretch it until it snaps. And at that point, you have to go out and guard so far away from the basket that it opens up the middle of that floor. Much in the same way that Shaquille O'Neal would make you pound it in defensively so much, you needed to pay so much attention to him by the basket that it opened everything up away from the floor. Curry sort of does the same thing 25 feet away.
Right.
So that area around the basket is abnormally wide open for this team, and that's a huge part of the reason. You want a stat here? Can I give you a stat?
Yeah.
For the Rockets to win this series, they will have to win 4 out of 5 games, right? That's where they stand right now, down 2-0. Do you know the last time the Warriors lost 4 games in a 5-game span?
When?
It's been over 16 months. Over 16 months. At no point this season did it happen. So we would have to describe this as unlikely.
And the Rockets are going to have to walk away from this, seizing on to a couple things. They'll obviously think, you know what? We played well enough that we came down to a last shot potentially. And the second thing is they double-team Steph Curry, which is something that people say you shouldn't do because he's so good. And guess what? It worked. And you would imagine that going into Game 3, that's something they're going to build off of.
Yeah, I think the Rockets can come out of these. There are no moral victories in this stuff. Well, why do I keep telling you what people are going to say? Let's hear PJ. Here's PJ Carlesimo after the game last night saying the Rockets should not be down about their performance in Games 1 or 2.
It says to me that they still have a realistic chance to get back in this series. To go into Oakland, they get blown out 4 times, 15 points a game in the regular season. They go in there twice. Dwight Howard's not 100%. They lose by 4, Game 1. They lose on the last possession today in a 1-point game. I think they got to be encouraged. Do they have their work cut out for them? Absolutely. But if they can hold serve back in Houston, this series starts all over. Playoff basketball is all about one day at a time. All they can think about right now is Game 3. We're going home. Hey, these guys were down 3-1 to L.A., and everybody had them buried. It was over, and they were also down a bunch of points late in the game. It didn't bother them. They're capable of coming back if Dwight Howard is healthy.
We are Mike and Mike again. Buster with us here. His Subway Fresh Take all morning long. We'll take your Twitter questions for him starting soon using the hashtag #AskBuster. We're presented, as always, by Progressive Insurance. Your experience, Buster, covering teams.
Yep.
When they have come back from the dead, which happens a lot. You cover a series sport, as is basketball. Of course, you cover baseball. When teams come back from the dead, as the Rockets did, they were as dead can be. They were down 3-1 to the Clippers, and they were down 19 with 14 minutes left to go in Game 6.
Right.
Do you find that, generally speaking, from that point forward, they play looser because they have faced their own mortality? They've already basically dealt with the notion that they may, get knocked out here, and they kind of play a little bit with house money the rest of the way.
They play loose, and the other team starts to get tight because they have the advantage. And the best example that I can, in the time I've covered, Yankees, Braves, 96 World Series. The Yankees lose Games 1 and 2 at home. George Steinbrenner's going around saying, we're in trouble. We're going to be an embarrassment to baseball. And Joe Torre tells him, no, we're going to try to find a way to come back. Games 3, 4, and 5, I thought Atlanta played tight.
And the Yankees wound up winning it in Game 6.
Winning the World Series.
That's exactly right. So the Warriors were not on the other side of this thing, but the Rockets have sort of stared elimination in the face. I don't think that this will – I think they're going to make this a tougher series than I thought. I picked Golden State in 5. It may still go that way, but these 2 games have been tougher for the Warriors than I expected. All right, Buster is here. We got great stuff today. Much more hoops, obviously, as we go.
Guys, when you buy your clothes at DXL, you look good. But you feel like a rock star. So if you want to look and feel like you'll find all the brands you love, waist size 38 and up, all in one awesome store. DXL, you're looking good. Right now, Harbor Bay tees are just $19.99 each when you buy 2 or more.
Warriors beat the Rockets in a thriller, 99-98. It comes down to one final play. James Harden has the ball in his hands. Kevin McHale chooses not to call a timeout. I don't have a problem with it. Buster doesn't have a problem with it. We'll see what Brian Windhorst thinks when he joins us in a moment. Either way, Golden State up 2-0. Anaheim Ducks beat the Blackhawks 2-1, so they lead that series 2-1 for Chicago. Its first loss at home in this postseason. And our Sports Center with Mike and Mike is brought to you by Velveeta Shells and Cheese. Pardon me, there's gold in them. Our Shells liquid gold. Again, Buster Olney is in for Golick. Brian Windhorst in just a second. But a very funny note for my buddy Mitch Truitt, who was listening to the show this morning. I was just telling the story about J-Lo and the time that we met.
You didn't meet.
It's a meeting.
You didn't meet.
And she did not speak. But as far as I'm concerned, we met. And actually, Hembo sent me the definition of meeting. So the dictionary definition of meet is to come upon, to come in the presence of, to encounter.
Oh, my goodness.
Are you telling me that we did not satisfy all of those?
Are you serious?
I came upon J-Lo. It's a dictionary.
Breaking out a dictionary.
I came upon J-Lo. I came into the presence of J-Lo. I encountered J-Lo. I did all 3 of those things.
No.
So to me, that's a meeting. I met her. And my friend Mitch Truitt writes a very funny note where he says, I'm driving this morning and I'm listening to the show. Did it ever occur to you that J-Lo was simply overwhelmed by the sexual tension? She's only human. So I think that might be what it is. She was so impressed by me that she could hardly bring herself to speak.
That's really appalling.
My own wife is hysterical laughing now listening. All right, to the finish last night.
Curry backs off, surveys. He's got 5 to shoot. He throws cross court to Iguodala. His pass deflected. It's grabbed by Barnes into the lane. A little roundhouse scoop won't go. Harden the rebound, 7 seconds. Harden clears midcourt with 4. Harden steps back with 3. Gives to Howard. Back to Harden with 1. He will not get off the shot. Thompson deflects the ball away. Golden State gets possession. The game is over. 99-98.
for him. All the second guesses will say, well, he shouldn't have passed the ball away in the first time. That's the second guess. But he did the right thing because he was out of control. But then, unfortunately, what happens when he gets the ball back, give Golden State credit, they trapped him, and he could not dribble. Give Golden State a lot of credit. The two defenders saved the game.
The two defenders are Klay Thompson and Steph Curry. The call from Kevin Calabro and Hubie Brown on ESPN Radio is exceptional. It really gives you a sense of what happened. Two Warriors are out of the play after the missed Harrison Barnes shot. Barnes falls on his butt. Draymond Green, going for an offensive rebound, gets shoved basically under the stanchion. James Harden is running downhill in a broken court. There are some who are critical this morning of Kevin McHale for not calling a timeout in that situation. To me, that is exclusively looking at the result, not looking at the circumstance. Because in the circumstance, as McHale said afterwards, that's exactly what I want. I want the ball in the hands of my best player going downhill. Let's see if our buddy Brian Windhorst, who does a terrific job covering basketball for us, agrees or disagrees. He's on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Brian, what was your take on the final 8 seconds last night?
Yeah, you're not going to get a timeout in that situation, especially because you're running away from your bench. And so even if you had the greatest play call in your pocket in the history of the league, all 10 players on the court and all 3 officials are moving away from your bench. So you're not going to get the call. So that's off the table right away. And I also think that Dwight Howard did the exact right thing. He basically just gave the ball back to James immediately so that he could, try to reestablish. The mistake, and, look, I never think a game like this comes down to one play, but obviously if you're James Harden, who right now is the best driver of the basketball in the league, you try to figure out a way to keep holding on to the ball and get it up to the rim and try to get a foul. There's a good chance that situation, if he makes a move to the rim with all of his arsenal, he may draw a foul and be able to win it at the free throw line. But honestly, in fairness, it's hard to judge something like that under that kind of stress. It just didn't work out. It could have easily worked out for them, and it just didn't. And there's other plays in the game that you regret. What an incredible finish to a game, and the Rockets have to be sick to their stomachs to not be able to come out of those 2 games with a win.
Brian, sometimes in the sport that I cover in baseball, a pitcher will give up a game-winning home run. They go back and look at the video, and they'll say, you know what? It was the right pitch, and the guy just did a good job hitting the ball. And I thought of that when watching this last play because it seemed like Steph Curry did a tremendous job of overplaying his left hand, taking that away, and suddenly creating this bottle that he and Klay Thompson used against Harden. So my own take was that it was their defense versus Harden making a mistake. How about you?
Yeah, I think the issue is you gave the Warriors an inch and they beat you. And that's the microcosm of playing the Warriors. One of the reasons why they're the best team in the league and why they're going to be so hard to beat 4 out of 7. And at this point, if you're the Rockets, you'd have to win 4 out of 5. Is because the margin for error that you have against the Warriors is infinitesimal. Whether on offense, whether you're a step slow on a rotation, you're a step slow challenging a shot, you lose your balance trying to cover Steph Curry on the dribble. Bam, he beats you. There is no margin for error when playing the Warriors. That is, they are the no margin for error team, and that was exactly what happened on the last play. James Harden makes one little error, which is he loses a little bit of control of the ball while he's dashing up the court with 7 seconds left. And for that little error, the Warriors swarm him and play textbook defense in that situation and don't let him get the shot off. To beat them, you have to be almost perfect. And that's really why they are everybody's favorite to win this whole thing.
Again, Golden State has not lost 4 games in a 5-game stretch in over 16 months. So that's the mountain that Houston has to climb going home for Game 3 tomorrow. Game 2 is tonight in Atlanta between the Cavs and the Hawks. And I would ask you, Brian, what you may know more than anyone does about the status of DeMarre Carroll. The initial reports were more favorable than it looked the other night. Do you have any sense that he is going to play, and if so, that he's going to be even remotely effective, particularly on the defensive end, and give LeBron some trouble?
I don't know how he could possibly play in this game. First off, he has a sprained knee. That's number one. But let's just move past that. And this is something that's real. DeMarre Carroll just dodged catastrophe. He has played his whole career to get to the contract he is about to sign this summer. He is not like some of these other guys who's coming off a $40 million contract and is going to sign another $40 million contract. His family and their livelihood will depend on the contract that he is about to sign, and he worked to that contract for the last 3 or 4 years to get to this opportunity. $10 to $12 million a year, in my opinion, on a long-term deal, 3 or 4 years. He almost lost that 2 days ago. And now he's in a situation where his knee is weakened, in a weakened state, and I just don't know if it's responsible for him and his family to try to go in this situation. And I know that's not what people want to hear, but that's the reality. What really this highlights is the loss of Thabo Sefolosha to the broken leg with the incident with the police in New York City. If they had Thabo Sefolosha, they could put him in there and maybe give Carroll 2 or 3 more games and maybe try to bring him back later in the series. But because they don't have him, they don't have anybody to deal with LeBron, and all of a sudden becomes an exasperating situation. And LeBron said this yesterday. LeBron said, I can't believe he would play. And he was saying that on a personal nature, not in a professional nature.
Brian, given that the Cavs have a 1-0 lead, I heard P.J. Carlesimo speculate last night that perhaps if you're the Cavs, you decide, you know what, we're going to sit down Kyrie Irving, we're going to give him a chance to get healthy because we've already done what we set out to do, which is to split the 2 games in Atlanta. What do you think the chances of that are?
I would say 0. If Kyrie doesn't play, it's because he's too hurt to play. If he can play, they're going to play him. First off, they just gave him 6 days off. He felt pretty good, and he still wasn't able to recover. So all of a sudden, giving him 2 more, 3 more days off, I don't think would make a difference. Secondly, you don't take anything for granted in the NBA. And I just offer you the last round, Clippers-Rockets. Clippers are up 3-1 in the series, and then in a closeout game on their home floor, they're up 19 points. They let their guard down. They ended up at home. You can't let your guard down. You have to go for the kill in this situation. So unless Kyrie's dragging that leg, he's going to go out there and play.
And I would ask you, again, Brian, you're not a doctor, but you're the only person I have to ask this question to. Is there any reason to think that Kyrie Irving is at any point during this postseason run for Cleveland, as far as it may go, going to be any semblance of himself at his best?
No. And that's another thing why this looks like it's the Warriors' year, because out of everything that's happened in this league, not only are the Warriors the best team, they're the healthiest team. The Cavs are playing without one of their best 3 players, and with Kyrie Irving operating at somewhere between 60 and 70%, depending on the day. The fact that the Cavs are even ahead 1-0 in this series is a testament to LeBron and their resilience and the weakness of the East. They really have no business being in this position with the injuries they've had.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
All right, let's find out what Tony Kornheiser thinks. Again, Tony with us on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline, the star of PTI, and so much more, and one of the best-known voices in sports forever. And Tony, as you know, we sort of live more than ever before in a society where anytime someone does something goes wrong or someone loses, there has to be blame. So people are blaming the coach today for not calling a timeout. People are blaming James Harden rather than just saying, you know what, it's one of those 50-50 moments. Defense did a great job, and they wind up getting the win. What are your thoughts overall on where we are with the NBA playoffs and last night's exciting game?
Well, first of all, I'm amazed that you stayed up for that and still had to get up to do radio this early. I was dead asleep for that. I can't imagine you actually saw it except on replay. But kudos to you if you now live in a 24-hour world. That's great. What are my thoughts on the NBA playoffs in general?
Yes.
Because I was a sports writer for 1,000 years, and I'm sure that Buster, having been a sports writer, feels exactly the same way. The people that win the first game, I want them to win 4 in a row. I just want it to be over. I want them, because I remember being a writer. You just don't want to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And the playoffs are fine. I'm happy to watch Curry and Harden. I think they're great players. I think that in the other side, it's the Eastern Conference. It's not as much fun. I mean, LeBron is the best player, but he's been very diminished because of what's happened around him. Kevin Love's not there, and Kyrie Irving is playing on one leg. And LeBron, you watch this, and it seems that their offense is, and obviously he doesn't listen to the coach because he is the coach and he is the general manager and probably owns the team as well. And he pounds the ball for 20 seconds and then misses a jump shot. It's just, that one is not as much fun, is it? Yeah, it's just not.
I totally agree, and the fact that Cleveland is probably going to get to the final as diminished as they are says a lot about the conference in which they play it, and maybe about how it just sort of is Golden State's year with everything falling into place. But I would like to get your historical perspective. You go back farther than I do.
Because I'm old? Is this a way of saying, my God, Kornheiser, you are so old. You're as old as David Letterman. Why don't you tell us when the Ark was created?
It was a nice way of saying that, I thought.
Very cute.
Because I get yelled at a lot when I say that I think LeBron is as good as anyone I've ever seen play. And if you were asking me in my life, I go back to basically as a spectator and a fan, I would say the mid-1970s. And I would say only Michael Jordan is a better player than LeBron James in that time that I've seen. What is your perspective? And then people start yelling. And people have this enormous desire, I feel now, to diminish LeBron. And there are probably a variety of reasons why. What about you? What do you think?
You're very cranky this morning. I really enjoy that. I think cranky is what made me all this money, so I like to see other people be that way. Well, I'm old enough to have seen everybody. And the greatest individual talent of all time was Wilt Chamberlain. It's not even close. I mean, he was unbelievable at his size in that time with what he could do athletically. But, you know, now, I mean, and I'm with Wilbon all the time, who's a Jordan acolyte, obviously, and doesn't want to admit that anybody could be as good as Jordan. I mean, you go from Wilt Chamberlain to Oscar Robertson to, you know, Julius Erving, to Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James. LeBron James is as good as anybody who ever played. I mean, why would anybody not say that? Are you going to scream and yell that he doesn't have as many championship rings as somebody else? I mean, he totally controls the game, offensively and defensively. It's just foolish not to say that, don't you think?
I think it's foolish not to say it, and yet there seem to be a lot of people out there who don't want to say it. Mike,
don't pay attention to them. I mean, live your own life. Live your life assured that what you say is right and what other people say is not right. That's the way we live, don't you feel?
I would agree. And, Tony, you accurately delved into the selfish soul of sports writers and the way that you portray that. Absolutely.
4 and out, baby. 4 and out. Let's go.
4 and out.
Go
you
home.
want them. So I wanted to get your take on what we saw the other day with Steph Curry and his little daughter sitting at the podium and writers saying that they're kind of griping about the situation that she was getting in the way of their work.
Yeah.
What was your take on that?
Well, it's good that you say little daughter, because if she was like 18, people would have said, get out of here. What are you doing here? Get out. I'm going to come down on the side of the sports writers. I was not an athlete. I've heard athletes say, I want to celebrate the way I want to celebrate. I heard somebody say last night that nothing is ever gained out of a post-game press conference. Well, you've never had to meet a deadline, so you have no idea what that is. You're an athlete. You're not a writer. These are different occupations. Is his daughter cute? Sure, she's very, very cute. Was it horrifying? No, wasn't very horrifying. Should there be a rule that if it's not a championship win, that you should probably come in there alone and respect what other people are doing and respect the fact that there's a symbiotic relationship between athletes and the media, which enables athletes to make, $21 million a year? So I would assume, Buster, that you agree with me that all things being equal, that it's better if the player is in there alone, and that things, in fact, are gleaned from press conferences. Not as many as there used to be because of the size and the crush of the amount of people in there. But every once in a while, you have a question that needs a very specific answer, and you hope the person answering that question will give you his or her undivided attention. Do you disagree with that?
No, I agree with you.
Boom, and we're doing great today.
And I've been in that situation, and you're annoyed by it, but you say nothing.
That's
just move on.
That's right.
And here's why I don't agree, Tony. I'll be honest with you. And here's what has happened now is that we have gone from the place that it was when you were out there really in the field covering sports on a regular basis, and even when I was as recently as 15 years ago, to a place now where that post-game press conference has become a show. That has become a show. Dwayne Wade has a stylist who we had on the air who will pick out, before they make their championship runs, his outfits for every single night when he's going to go to the podium and all that. It's all become part of the show, part of the spectacle. And Steph Curry and all of these NBA stars are using that platform to their own benefit. And while I understand the plight of the writers and others who are sitting there doing their job, what I think has been lost in that conversation is that isn't the player's fault. He has a specific goal that he's trying to accomplish by sitting up there, and he's still answering the questions. He's not ignoring them. He does show up there every single night, and one night he brought his daughter. I thought that the the controversy / criticism was disproportionate to the act itself.
It's hard for me to say I disagree with anything you've said, but a lot of things can be true simultaneously. The writers are there. I'm just going to talk about writers now, because that's what I was, okay? I'm not now, but that's what I was. The writers are there to try and get additional information to serve their readers. That's why they earn money, because they're serving their readers, and presumably they're better than other people who are not at their papers, and there's a ladder that you try to climb all the way up to the top newspaper. And it's possible that in a moment of candor, an athlete, with or without his children, might say something that would be revelatory and inform readers in a way that they wouldn't ordinarily be informed, because they're not watching it necessarily on TV, and they're waiting for some, print to get out there. So while I don't deny that that's a show and people bring their stylists and all of that, that doesn't in any way infringe upon the notion that the possibility exists that a good question is asked and a good answer is given. That's all I'm saying. I'm not attacking Steph Curry for bringing his kid. Some people bring 5 and 6 and 8 kids. Some people bring their lawyers. Some people bring an entire entourage. I mean, that's all fine. I don't care about that. What I care about is the possibility that something revelatory can happen. That's it.
It's a fair conversation. Mike, Tony Kornheiser, whom I could listen to talk forever.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Let's just go off book for a second.
Sure.
Have you noticed that on the late Sports Center, nobody's wearing a tie anymore?
I actually commented on that to Buster this morning.
Is that coming? Is that a directive from somebody like a stylist? I mean, if you talk about Dwayne Wade having his own stylist, so do we all have our own stylist. What's that about? And how do you feel about it?
I sit next to a man who the first time we were guests on the David Letterman show wore a shirt that said Dr. Pepper on it, Tony.
The first time. What a humble brag. That infers that there's like 10 or 12 times. Good for you. No, I'm not talking about that guy. I'm talking about the Sports Center people.
I know. I saw it. I don't know when it started because I commented on it. Buster and I were getting ready for the show this morning, and it was the first time that I noticed it as well.
This is 2 days in a row now. This is very specifically done. There has to be a directive. There has to be a memo. I didn't get the memo. Me personally, because as we mentioned before, I'm ancient. I like ties.
Yeah.
I do. I like ties I like to wear ties. So it's, that's fine. But haven't you noticed that?
I just noticed it this morning, and I think that there is no question, Tony, it will contribute to a rating spike. I think the enormity and the growth of the audience of that show based upon the now more casual outfits the anchors are wearing, there will be a direct correlation.
That'd be great. I'd love to see people like in Bermuda shorts and high socks. That would make me so happy. That's so old. Anything else, or am I done? Can I go on with my work?
No, we're going to keep you as long as we possibly can without you getting too upset at us. Ray told us how excited you were.
I did. I actually said to Ray, tell him to lose my number. Tell him, because I'm actually going to do my own show.
But you have more insight than people can imagine. The Tony Kornheiser Show podcast, by the way, is available on ESPNradio.com and on iTunes.
Plug. Thank you for the plug.
You just mentioned something, though, Tony. You've got a podcast now.
Yeah.
You got a radio show?
Well, I've got a radio show that has turned into this podcast, because the way that radio is delivered now is essentially on demand. People don't want to listen while it's live. They want to listen when they want to listen. That's fine.
You host maybe the most popular sports debate show in America with Michael, called Pardon the Interruption, for anyone who doesn't know.
We've done well, haven't we?
You just said you have a stylist. You inferred.
Well, no, I don't have a hairstyle. No, I mean, well, when I was doing Monday Night Football, there was a woman who picked out all the clothes for all the people and said, on week 2 you'll wear this, and on week 6 you'll wear this, and on week 10 you wear that. I mean, I assumed that was done because left to our own devices, either we would have looked like ragamuffins, or because, somebody felt that it was important to look a certain way, right?
Correct.
Don't you have the same thing?
I do. Mine is my wife, but that's neither here nor there. But the point of it is that you said, and I one of the things that I most like about listening to people like you talk about sports is that you started at this in a completely different era.
Sure.
And you contribute to whatever degree you do now to things like social media and Twitter and all that kind of stuff.
No, I'm off that stuff. I don't do that. I won't do social media. I mean, if I did social media, I would be fired in 10 seconds. So I've learned I just can't do that. I don't read about myself, and I don't contribute to that, though it is true that we've hired a young woman named Serafina at PTI whose job is to get Wilbon and I on social media, though we don't necessarily actively contribute ourselves. She's around us all the time, and there is a social media component to PTI now, yes.
Correct. There's a Mr. Tony Says account on Twitter. I follow
Yeah, but
it.
I mean, somebody else does that.
Okay, but that was why I suggested that to some degree you contribute to this.
Yeah.
The bigger picture question I'm trying to ask is it better now? With all this stuff that's going on, in your view, the way sports are consumed, dissected, analyzed, and discussed today versus 20 or 30 years ago, is it better or worse now?
It alternates better or worse. It's sort of like the Internet. The Internet is a terrible, terrible thing that crushes people's souls sometimes and also gives you information that you never ordinarily would have gotten. So it's both better and worse almost all the time. I would sound terribly like a curmudgeon if I said it was automatically worse. I am a little bit surprised at the sort of, Sturm und Drang that goes on about sports more so than I ever remembered. It seemed to be quieter when I was young, but maybe that's just because of the way things have changed in terms of all of the outlets. I don't necessarily think it's worse. I know it'd be an interesting conversation if I said that, but I don't. I think one thing is absolutely certain: all of us are richer. We really are. All of us, and so it's unseemly to complain too much.
And then a final question, and we will then let you get off to
What is the capital of Missouri? It's Jefferson City.
It's good.
I was hoping that was the question.
It wasn't, but It might have at one point been the home office of David Letterman's top 10 list. I just wanted to get your perspective on what felt to a lot of us like the end of an era, like someone we have been friends with. I mean, I'm younger than you are. I feel like David Letterman has been on TV my whole life. He was on when I was in college. I literally watched him every single night while I was in college and all of that. So it felt like, even if it isn't a show that I continue to watch because of the hours that I work now, it was always kind of comforting to me to know that it was there if I wanted it. It was sort of like a long-standing friendship coming to an end. I just wonder your perspective on it.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Letterman was a genius. I find it very intriguing that within a year of each other, Letterman and Leno left, and everybody said, oh, Jay Leno, that's nice, have a cookie. And when Letterman left, it became a very important thing across the country. I'm just about the same age as David Letterman. I loved him, but I think that, people now at a certain age, at 14 or 15 or 16, the way they consume Kimmel and Fallon and people like that, they'll feel that same way in 30 years. I mean, I do think Letterman was brilliant. I do think that things have changed. It was explained to me the other day by Bill Carter, who wrote that wonderful book and movie, The Late Shift. It was explained that the difference between Kimmel and Fallon and Letterman is those guys, the younger guys, everything they do seems to be with the aim of getting on social media for, as quickly as possible and building up as many hits as possible. And Letterman, being my age, didn't think that way because social media came along at a later time. I mean, I thought he was great, but I thought Carson was great. And when I was really, really young, I knew about Jack Parr. And I think, I think that great people come along routinely, well, probably not routinely, but regularly, and they attract this kind of adulation and all of these acolytes, and I don't know that one is better than the other. They just maybe suit their times a little bit better than the ones previously.
It's Tony Kornheiser again. The podcast available.
God, that was so pretentious. You should have stopped me in the middle
I disagree.
of that.
I thought it was very well said.
Ooh.
I thought it was well said, and I thought it was comparatively concise.
Well, now I have no breath left for my own radio show.
ESPNradio.com and iTunes for the Tony Kornheiser Show podcast. We will leave you to your business. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you very much.
ESPN Radio.
With the action on the court, the diamond, or the gridiron.
Comes alive.
The NBA.
The San Antonio Spurs are the world champions.
Major League Baseball.
San Francisco Giants are the champions of the baseball world.
The new college football playoff.
College football playoff national champion, the Ohio State Buckeyes.
You're home for the best in sports play-by-play.
ESPN Radio.
Now, for those who don't know, Buster Olney was raised on a dairy farm in Vermont. Golick loves to fish, talks about fishing all the time, and usually he take me fishing, commercials are his to read because he loves fishing. His dad took him when he was a kid. He took his kids. I'm not really much of a fisherman, which come as a very little surprise. Now, you were raised around a lot of animals. Did you go out fishing?
We had a small brook that went through the middle of our property, and I would go down there. But, you're talking about like 6 to 8 inch trout. Okay, brook trout, but nothing serious.
That's small?
That small.
Okay.
Very small.
And you would catch them using what?
I would catch them.
What would you do? You got a rod and a reel, or is that a net situation?
No, a net? What?
What we used to do, where I grew up, there was a little lake, not in New York, but in a place where I would spend my summers when I was a kid. There was a lake. And what the kids would do is we would have like a net, and you would take like pieces of bread, and you would drop a piece of bread in the water, and a fish would swim up to eat the bread, and we'd try and catch the fish in the net. And then if you caught him, oh my goodness, you caught the fish, and then we would let it go immediately. And I wouldn't even do that, because the second the fish starts flapping around in the net, it made me very nervous.
Yeah, that's the Flatlander version of fishing. Okay, you need a big wide net. Okay, as opposed to just doing the sporting. What you did was essentially unfair. In fact, I was guessing as you were telling the story, your way of fishing was like with firecrackers, right? You light something, drop it into the water, 8 fish float up dead, and you call that
I would
fishing.
never do that. I would never occur to me to do that, but I would never do it. In fact, it's been so long, Buster, since we've had you here.
Yeah.
Just very quickly, because so many of the people listening have never heard it.
Yeah.
If you would be so kind as to tell the Daniel Boone story.
So my first pet that I had was an Angus steer named Daniel Boone.
My first pet, parenthetically, was a hamster named Peppy. But that's neither here nor there. So your first pet was an Angus steer. Now, for those who don't know, that's a cow. Right?
That is a cow.
Cow.
Well, it's, yeah.
It turns into Angus beef, right?
Well, no, I mean, a cow is female, right? A steer is actually a former male after a procedure is done, okay? So I had an Angus steer.
So it's a bull.
It was a former bull. It becomes a steer after procedure is done.
A former bull? You mean like Scottie Pippen when he went to Houston?
It's a bull, and then a procedure is done, and it becomes a steer.
At the risk of asking a stupid question, what procedure is done? Is this like a... okay, got it. Sorry.
You want me to spell it out?
No.
Okay.
I swear to you, it did not occur to me that. I see. So it's now. It's been removed.
It's been removed.
Okay,
we've got to.
I understand. Okay. Say no more.
Okay, so my first pet was Danny Boone, the Angus steer.
Danny Boone? Did you call him Danny?
So I went off to my friend Jimmy Davenport's to play, and I knew that this was going to happen. When Daniel Boone was about 2 years old, that's when, they're fully formed. That's when he's at his peak physically, right? And
some could argue that after the procedure he was no longer going to be at his peak physically, but that's neither here nor there.
Okay.
So you go to Jimmy Davenport's.
I go to Jimmy Davenport's house. I come back, and I knew this was going to happen, but the first thing I see are the 4 stomachs of Daniel Boone on our backyard because Daniel Boone had been butchered while I was away.
This would explain a lot of the psychological difficulty that you've encountered throughout the rest of your life. If I had ever come home and found my hamster had been slaughtered, and I don't know, does a hamster have 4 stomachs? A cow has 4 stomachs?
A cow has 4 stomachs, yes.
I don't even want to get into why that might be.
Okay.
But so
hay was sticking through the stomach, so I'll never forget. It's locked into my mental image.
Hay?
Yeah.
Was sticking through the... No, don't do that. Don't even do that. I don't even play the sound effects. It's such a troublesome story to me. Like, that would destroy me. That would destroy me. It didn't destroy you?
No, we were eating Daniel Boone within a couple of weeks. Okay, and then there were times when we were growing up on a farm, and you have a bite of some hamburgers. Wait, is this Daniel Boone, or is this Little Bub?
You can't do that.
Is this is this when we had pigs? Is this O'Brien that we're eating here? Is that bacon? This is outstanding bacon. O'Brien really gave it up here.
O'Brien? You had a pig named O'Brien?
Yes, we did.
How do you choose the names, just out of curiosity?
We loved our pets.
Do you develop? What do you mean you loved it?
We did.
Develop an actual emotion?
Absolutely. I can tell you, look, in my mind's eye right now, I can tell you about Rebecca, I can tell you about Felicia, I can tell you about Vanilla, I can tell you about Daniel Boone, I can tell you about Little Bub. I can run through them.
We had hundreds of names afterwards?
Yes.
Like your Hannibal Lecter? I mean, I
didn't quite think of it as being Hannibal Lecter. We were...
So it did not make you sad?
It was a circle of life.
Were you not sad?
Of course it did.
Have you ever seen the movie Old Yeller?
Of course.
Do you cry at the end?
I did when I was little.
Yes. I would cry if I saw it now.
Yes.
So my question to you is, why is this so different?
Because that's just the way it is. Look, as in the movie Babe, there's a line in there that you probably didn't see it because it involved farm animals. That's the way things are. That's the way things are when you're on a farm. You have a cow, you can love the cow, it's there for 8 years, the milk production goes down. It's like a baseball team. Milk production goes down, you call the big red truck, and the cow is gone, and within probably 4 days, it's dog food.
It's not like a baseball team, because when a baseball player turns 40, his 4 stomachs are not sitting around on the ground.
Farmers invented sabermetrics. They keep track of how much milk a cow gives, and when the cow stops giving milk, then you bring in the next cow.
Look, I don't want to sound like a hypocrite. I eat meat, and I'm not like that, but I can't even fathom it. Okay, anyway, I've always found that story to be completely fascinating. What reaction have you gotten? Again, we brought this up earlier this morning. Will Smith wasn't getting jiggy with it last night. Will Smith was ejected from the game between the Brewers and the Braves last night because he very obviously had a shiny foreign substance on his forearm. The Braves manager, Freddie Gonzalez, goes out and informs the umpires of this. The umpires have no choice but to eject him. He goes to his own dugout screaming and yelling at the Atlanta bench, What are you doing? Because it is fully commonly accepted that players use this substance in order to get a better feel of the baseball. It does not really gain them as much of a competitive advantage as it does make it safer for the hitters in there. So and just think about it logically, if you have someone throwing 95 miles an hour a baseball that close to you, and particularly to your head, you want them to have as much control over it as possible. So you've said baseball needs to change the rule one way or the other. What reaction have you been getting?
Well, and to back up the point about pitchers being able to control the ball, after the game, Freddie Freeman of the Braves said, yeah, they do that so they don't hit us in the head. In other words, he doesn't blame him for using it. He made the statement also about, you shouldn't be so obvious about it, which is what we heard after Michael Pineda was suspended, which I find to be the most ridiculous slippery slope ever, right? Mm-hmm. You can put it on your forearm and make it a little less obvious, but don't put it on your neck. I mean, that's crazy. That's ridiculous. In fact, a few weeks ago, I was watching Michael Pineda pitch, and I see him do what every pitcher does now. He's going to his forearm. So he probably is doing the exact same thing he did when he got suspended in April, but he's just not as obvious with it. Look, get away from that system, because at any point, a manager, or let's say he's having a bad day, could just say, you know what, go check the pitcher. And he could get the pitcher out of the game and suspended. How would you like to have that happen in the World Series? First inning, the opposing pitcher's out there with the same thing everybody else has, and the manager said, you know what, we want to take him out of the game, go check the umpire, and everyone knows what's on his forearm, bullfrog, sunscreen, or pine tar in the hat. It's something baseball should change.
I understand what you're saying. Now, I'm trying to think through the different solutions to this. One of them could be before the World Series, the managers could get together and agree they're not going to do that. But the reality of it is, if they're going to do that, then why have the rule on the books in the first place? The reason the rules are on the books, okay, we had Brad Stevenson here yesterday, who was a college coach for a long time, of course, at Butler before he became the coach of the Celtics. And he was saying, the NCAA's rules about food were so specific and ridiculous. You could either give them, I think it was fruit, nuts, and bagels, or a meal once a month. I mean, it was just crazy. And I yell and scream about it all the time. Now, the fair response to that is, why do they have those rules in place? Because once you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile, right? So they're going to all of a sudden start saying, well, listen, now the next thing you know, we're going to have special catering. We're going to give your parents a restaurant. Because people are going to find a way, if you give them an opening, to run through it instead of walk through it, they're going to go through it with a bulldozer. So how does baseball ensure, if they allow this, that it does not become something pitchers take advantage of to gain a competitive edge?
First, I know that baseball is, at least some officials have had conversation about if there could be a substance they could all agree on. But, is there something that they would give to pitchers the way that hitters can use pine tar? They give pitchers rosin, but clearly it's not enough. I mean, we're seeing pitchers, that's why they're making the adjustment. Mm-hmm. But I think what baseball could do is have a conversation about, look, their concern is about volume. They don't want to have pitchers applying whole gobs of pine tar to the ball, which would alter its trajectory. So why not have a situation where you allow them to get a little tackiness on the forearm, just like just about everybody already does, or pine tar on the cap where they touch it, and you see the dark spot on a lot of pitchers' caps. That's pretty much what that is. And have the pitcher present their arm, their glove to the umpire before the game and say, look, I'm going to double check with you. Just as we see pitchers on cold days will look into the umpire and make this gesture as if they're blowing on their hand and asking, am I allowed to blow on my hand because it's cool enough? And they get permission for that. Let the umpires check out the volume of stuff on them and say, you know what, that's okay. Or Go wipe some off and come back and we'll check it again.
It feels like a Players Association issue. I mean, it feels to me like if the players are as close to united on this issue as I get a sense they are, that the players would want to bring this. The players' union might want to bring this to baseball.
Well, I would hope that they would do it. I would hope that, managers would do it. Managers are mostly united on this. You remember in the 2006
I don't think
World
anyone
Series.
listens to managers. I think they listen to. They have to listen to the Players Association.
2006 World Series. If you remember, Kenny Rogers of the Tigers had that spot on his palm, which everyone assumed was probably pine tar. It was a very cold day in Detroit. And Tony La Russa, to his great credit, the manager of the Cardinals at the time, went out, talked to the umpire, and I don't know exactly what was said. Tony would never tell us, but I'm pretty sure that what he said was, look, this is so obvious, it's blatant, it's on television. Please ask them to address this and clean it up. I don't want to make a big show out of this because I know our guys might be doing the same thing. And given that that's how most people in the game feel, find it a way to rewrite the rule that they have on the books, because what they have now is this ridiculous situation where Will Smith is going to get suspended for 10 games for doing something we know pretty much everybody else does.
This has been the Best of Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio Pod Center. To hear more from Mike and Mike, log on to ESPNRadio.com and become an ESPN Radio Insider.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
Isn't this weather great, Golick?
Yeah, it's been a long time since we've had a day like this.
Oh, and we're doing it upright. Some Johnsonville brats on the grill, a cold drink in our hands, feet kicked up. This is how to live.
Yeah, can you imagine all those people who have to be inside working on a day like this?
Yeah, those poor people.
Oh, I'm just so glad you found those guys to fill in and take our place on the show today.
Wait, what? I thought you were going to get the guest host for today.
No, Greenie. I said I was going to get some root beer floats.
Well, then who's doing our show right now?
Well, that's not good. We better get back to the studio.
But Golick, the brats are ready.
Oh, man, Johnsonville brats, all that full, juicy flavor that comes from only premium cuts of pork. We could probably enjoy a couple of these before we head back, right?
I don't see why not. That static seems to be doing okay, and it's certainly not going anywhere.
Then neither are we. Pass me one of those Johnsonville brats.
Johnsonville, served with pride since 1945. Find delicious recipes for the grill at johnsonville.com.
The Texas Rangers into the Bronx to face Alex Rodriguez, Mark Teixeira, and the Yankees. The pregame's at 7 Eastern, followed by first pitch at 8, Sunday on ESPN and on ESPN Radio.